the new MyLowe's Pro Rewards American Express card, earn 3 points per dollar spent on Lowe's qualifying purchases for the first 6 months after card account opening. Plus, save 5% every day on eligible purchases at Lowe's and earn points on eligible purchases everywhere else Amex is accepted. Card members get more at Lowe's. Subject to credit approval. 5% can't be combined with any other offer. Exclusions and restrictions apply. Points subject to loyalty terms at Lowe's.com/terms and credit reward terms at Synchrony.com/MLPRA-terms. Visit Lowe's.com/business credit.
Okay, guys, what's the question that you hate getting?
What happened to your hair? Nice setup, buddy. Nice setup.
From the heart of Hollywood, it's the Patrick Labyorteaux Show with Patrick Labyorteaux.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux Show. Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Tonight's episode, Matthew and Gunnar Nelson.
Patrick Labyorteaux Show. He's the one you gotta know.
Okay, these guys really don't need an introduction, but here goes. You know these guys as the #1 recording artist Nelson with a long history in the music business and come from a legendary family. I know them as my buddy Mark Harmon's nephews who have a band that I should check out. Please welcome Matthew and Gunnar Nelson.
Hey, Patrick, how's it going? Mr. Shoup says hello.
Great. All right. Thank you guys for doing this. Usually this podcast is dealing with people that I've directly worked with. But you know, it's kind of crazy the amount of connections. So obviously I worked with Harmon a number of times. And when we were doing summer school, he kept saying, you really should go see my nephew's band. And I'm like, yeah. I almost worked with Tracy in a movie,
all right, okay.
Prince of Bel-Air, but that didn't work out. Jonathan Gilbert, as we talked about. Okay, Gunnar, I also have a brother named Matthew, who I also worked with professionally on Little House.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, cool.
Exactly. So there's that. All right. So at some point, I'm going to let you guys talk, but I just got to continue this because I just finished reading your book, and I didn't read it. I listened to it. And so obviously I'm hearing your voices. And I've had you in my head for the last couple of days. And what's amazing is, you know, on this job, you have to read a lot of different books that people are writing. And some of them are good, but yours was amazing.
Thank you.
If I can say this in the right way and have it be taken in the correct manner, having a #1 single and being a Nelson is like kind of the least interesting part of this book. You guys are so inspirational, and it's hard for people to understand if they haven't read your book to understand that Nelson, the guys behind, you know, the songs and the videos, run so deep. When you guys are writing that book, were you faced with like, we've gone through a lot when you have to lay it out?
Well, I think the hardest part of it is that there's a lot of things that you don't want to think about that you put in that little emotional shoebox and kept on that top closet shelf.
It's admissible. Be careful.
That's right.
That's right.
You know, it even says Cincinnati right on the right.
You saved that box.
But you know, honestly, going through this, we tried to do it the way most people in our situation do. They hire a ghostwriter, a professional writer, and
right.
Those people will do recorded interviews for a certain amount of time, and then they'll kind of take your interviews and they'll make a book out of it. And you know, the person in the industry puts their name on it, and the real writers in little print. We tried it that way, Patrick, and it didn't work because we've got a very unique voice. And you could tell from listening to the book, we got the first pages from the writer, and, you know, it read like an instruction manual.
Just IKEA. It was not good.
It had no soul to it. And we were up against the time crunch because our publisher called and said, look, we've had the deal with you guys for 2 years. We were out touring and stuff. He said, but I need this book. I need it in my hands in 3 weeks. Done. Absolutely done.
Manuscript ready to go.
Ready to go. So Matthew and I cleared the decks. We told the Eric Shermans of the world to clear our schedules. And we sat down and did 3 straight weeks of 20-hour days and wrote every word of it ourselves. And I will say this, if the book sucks, it's Matt's fault.
Of course it is, always.
But what we wanted to do before we actually embarked on it, to even decide to write a book, there were 2 reasons why we did it now. One, it's an anniversary year from our father's plane crash, and we got a chance for the first time to really tell the truth behind what led up to that accident, which was completely 180 degrees from what the press had made up.
Yeah.
And it was really unfair to our dad. So we got to set that record straight. And, you know, the other reason, honestly, is we've got a lot of stuff that's going on in our world. And, you know, we think the best is yet to come. But we realized in the process of doing it that our superpower has always been being able to find a silver lining in the dark clouds. And we've all had a lot, but you mentioned the people that we all have in common. But the one thing I got to say right now is I think the biggest thing that we have in common, and the thing that I'm most proud of when people say, hey, what are you most proud of in your career? Because we've been able to be blessed and do a lot. It's remaining good guys in the worst business in the world. And you've managed to do that too. You never did the deal. You never sold your soul. You never sold anybody out. You've always taken care of the people around you. You're a good man. And in the business that you've chosen, man, that's a rarity. Matthew and I, as you mentioned, we grew up in that. That was our normal.
Right.
And we had a few people that we looked up to as well. And our dad was the same way. We still meet people that say, I spent some time with your father. He was the kindest person I ever met. He listened. He was there 100%. He never had a star moment. A lot of actors actually got their start on Ozzie and Harriet. It was, 435 episodes. It was 14 years. They grew up with the family, kind of like Little House. And, it's like Kent McCord was our dad's best friend. He wound up on Adam 12. He started on Ozzie and Harriet. There's so many of them.
Uncle Mark's first role ever. Mark Harmon's first role was in a gorilla suit on the set of Ozzie and Harriet.
Well, that's the offshoot. It was Ozzie's Girls.
That's how he earned his SAG card, which I thought was great,
But I think it's cool.
Well, it's amazing because obviously your dad's Ricky Nelson, but it occurred to me, and I don't know, I don't think you mentioned in the book. First of all, I think I would never want to write a book the way you guys wrote it, but I also think that it gives it a through line that I don't know if you'd get if you did it in chunks. Like having it all the way through really kind of like made it like a freight train roller coaster. I mean, how many times does the chapter start where it's like, we're broken, we're $4 million in debt, so much you have to take care of.
We had a conversation with Dana Strum, who's the manager for Vince Neil. He also is in the band Slaughter. And we've known him for years. He's been the epicenter of a lot of rock and roll moments. He was the one that put Randy Rhoads with Ozzy Osbourne. He's been around forever.
Oh, wow.
And he said, guys, here's the thing is I know who you are, but the problem is your record company back in the day certainly didn't do you any favors. They marketed you as pinup guys, and they didn't mention that you wrote all your songs, that you've been doing this since you were 6, that you played the LA clubs professionally from the time you were 12, that you really did pay your dues. And everybody out there, because of that, thinks that you're a couple of trust fund kids who are making music because you were the lucky
hobby.
And you were the lucky sperms. Right. And so we basically just wanted to tell the truth in our story. So before we wrote the book, that was really what we decided to do. Look, if we're going to do this, we're just going to tell the real story.
I think that's kind of the family legacy to a certain degree is honestly being misunderstood. Our dad went through it, because of course he was a Hollywood millionaire kid actor that just happened to be an awesome musician. And, so that as much of a blessing as that was, it kind of dogged him for his whole life. He ended up writing a song called Garden Party.
Yeah.
When he played an oldies show, he got booed off the stage at Madison Square Garden and wrote a song about it. Basically, it was the music world's greatest middle finger in a velvet glove. Kind of like, look, I spent my whole life being misunderstood. I'm a grown man. I've moved on. If you can't move on from where I've been, well, that's kind of your problem. You can't please everyone, so you got to please yourself. Our grandfather, Ozzie, he had a big band in the 30s, 1930s with our grandmother, Harriet. And that's where they kind of cut their teeth. He had #1 records and all this stuff. Nobody knew he was a lawyer. He had a law degree from Rutgers. He wound up negotiating his own contract.
This blew my mind that the in perpetuity in the universe, which is in every one of our contracts and your contracts, was from Ozzie.
That's the Ozzie Nelson clause. And to this day, every contract Matthew and I get when we come to that little provision, we always X out a little line and say, except for the Crab Nebula. We want to make sure people are paying attention.
Yes, we have sovereignty in the stars. Yeah.
Yeah, you're really going to miss out on all the residuals from the Crab Nebula when that actually happens. Act 1, beginnings. If you live under a rock and you don't know, let's just go over it. So Ozzie and Harriet, Ozzie Nelson and Harriet Nelson, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, they're your grandparents. Mm-hmm. On your mom's side, Tom Harmon, the football legend, and Elise Knox, the acting beauty, and mom and dad of Mark Harmon are your grandparents on your mom's side.
Correct.
Mark Harmon is your mom's brother. Mm-hmm. Tracy Nelson, the actress, is your sister.
Mm-hmm. Older sister, yeah.
Of course, older sister. Ricky Nelson's your dad. By the way, so you've got
No pressure. No pressure at all.
Pressure at all.
Ricky, Chris, Sam, Tracy, Matthew. Where does Gunnar come from? Where's that
tell you,
name? It's
yeah,
like
an
made for a
actor.
rock star.
Yeah.
An actor named Howard Keel he was a friend of our parents, and
A Swede.
He was a Swede, and he had a son named Gunnar, and Gunnar. And our dad
Right.
thought it was just the coolest name ever.
And we're
So-
if you think about it, the Nelson family, we're just a bunch of freaking Swedes, anyways. It was Oswald, who was the son of Anders, who was the son of Magnus. So when you think about it that way, where the hell did they get Matthew from?
Right, pretty much.
Right?
I think there was a Bible on the nightstand at St. Joseph's there in Burbank, and we
Right.
just had to come up with something. It served me. It's it's Gunnar and the other one usually, right? So
But where it really came from, Matthew was the firstborn was supposed to be Gunnar, but I was Breach with the cord wrapped around my neck. So I was about 30 minutes behind Matt.
yeah,
and this
I almost pulled an Elvis and got rid of my twin.
so I almost didn't. I didn't make it, and I fought really hard. And because I was difficult from the beginning, they just said that
Has to be Gunnar.
And
And there was a true story too. I don't know if you wrote it in the book, where the only person that could tell us apart was our sister
Tracy.
Tracy.
Yeah.
Was Tracy. And apparently, they had little bracelets on us, baby 1, baby 2, and all that kind of stuff. And they bathed us, and they switched the bracelets.
a candy striper accidentally switched the bracelets.
And our sister lost her crap. I mean, she was inconsolable, and they actually wound up footprinting us. And she was right.
So I almost grew
my
up Matthew,
Yeah.
which
Wow.
actually for everybody that knows us, that just would have
just
been
didn't work.
It would not have worked.
It's interesting. So I'm like the antithesis of you guys. I'm adopted. My brother Matthew's adopted. We are not blood related. We have no connection like that. Whereas you guys are literally the same egg, and you're like
We're mirror twins too, Patrick,
twins.
you know?
which is a huge deal.
Yeah.
Which goes. I don't know if you mentioned it or explained it in the book, but you mentioned that your OCD and your
I'm OCD as much as he's
ADD.
ADD.
Yeah.
right, and so it's like it's
So we
kind of
make,
like in
we
the
make
middle.
a whole person between the
Yeah.
two.
Girl? Yeah.
So
okay.
yeah.
I think that's really cool. So what's interesting is my brother and I, my brother's Italian, Mexican, I'm Irish and English, and it's like we don't look anything alike. We're years apart. Yet people, when they come up to us, if they recognize us from Little House, they'll want to know what it's like being a twin.
Sure.
And it's like, what the hell? How do you get that? So I can't imagine the type of questions you guys get as twins. Like, how is
Like
that?
the Corsican brothers, like if you bump your knee, does the other one feel it?
It's no one's
Right.
fault. The way we look at it, it's no one's fault, because if you look at the way twins, especially from our era growing up as Gen Xers, every time they put twins in a show, not when they were doing a Mary-Kate and Ashley thing where they were trying to get the most hours out of one
Because
character.
of child labor laws.
Right.
But
Right, but when they were actually portraying twins, it didn't matter their age. They could have been 40 years old. They made them dress the same. They made them talk at the
Right.
same time.
it was like the Hager brothers from Hee Haw,
But I don't blame people because they think that that being a twin is more of a freak show than it really is. Here's what's cool about it. In our case, I always had a best friend who was interested in the same stuff that I was into. We were both like addicted to music from the time we were babies, and we both
Right.
shared that, which was great. We both loved to race cars. Both have always loved pretty women. We love great food. But I've got my best friend with me all the time, and we're 58 right now, and so we've spent some time living apart. I lived here in Nashville for about 10 years, longer than Matt has. And I really missed him, man. We saw each other on the weekends when we go out and do shows and stuff, but it just wasn't the same. And, I've done a lot of work to be interdependent, and we're not codependent at all, but he still lives 5 minutes away. And it's kind of
Right.
nice having your best friend, like, right there. It's pretty great. So I found
Well,
that
also I mean, going through what you've gone through, because I have that with my brother. We were both on Little House. We were both actors, and it's like, so those shared experiences, no one's experienced it
right.
exactly like you, except the other brother.
The funny thing, you kind of blew my mind a little bit because I didn't know that you guys were adopted, but Jonathan and Melissa were adopted as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
there's a lot of adopted kids on Little House.
On Little House, there are a lot of adopted kids, lots of twins, and then everybody was related to everybody.
Yeah.
Which kind of goes to what, in fact, Charlotte Stewart, who played Mrs. Beadle, lived in the canyon at the same time that you guys were there. She and Joni were really good friends. And it's like, so she tells stories about what the canyon was like.
Yeah.
You were really young though, but You say you grew up in music. Obviously, Ricky's your dad, Ozzy's your grandpa, but was the Laurel Canyon thing, do you remember the music there as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. We were old enough,
Everybody played music, and everybody used to come over to the house to hang out. When we were born, our dad was just coming out of retirement from Ozzy and Harry. He took a couple years off, and he really dug the music that was just starting to happen in the Canyon. And fortunately, it was coming off of a couple of legitimate country albums where they kind of did an Elvis Tim. They wouldn't let him into Nashville, so he came back home and decided to turbocharge country music and turn the guitars
Yeah.
up a little bit. And he was in the right place at the right time, right when bands like Poco were happening and stuff. And his bass player Randy Meisner was one of the founding members of the Eagles. And so
Yeah.
our dad basically pushed our cribs aside to put his Stone Canyon band together. And it was the second phase of his life. He was hanging out with a lot of songwriters. Bob Dylan was one of them. Kind of challenged him, "Hey man, everybody thinks you don't have a brain and you can't speak. So why don't you turn them around a little bit?" And so he had nothing to lose for the first time. That's one thing that, being on television or film, because he could have gone on, he won, I think, a Golden Globe nomination for his role as Colorado on Rio Bravo. He was a great actor.
Uh-huh.
He just
Yeah.
hated getting up early in the morning. You know what that's like, and he really loved the energy that he got from a live audience, which you don't get in acting.
Not at all. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the exact opposite. You're not. There's a version of like when you do a sitcom where you get an audience, which is kind of amazing, and that's the closest you'll get. But otherwise, it's stone silent. You don't know how your performance is being, responded to.
Yeah, Grandma Harriet always said that the Nelson family was never in the entertainment business. She said, "Boys, we're in the connection business. That's what we do." And our dad, I think, was really addicted to that instant connection and feedback with a live audience that he didn't get when he was acting. I don't know how you do what you do when you're actually you're learning a script and you're having to embody a character that's somebody else's creation, and you have to bring that to life and all this stuff, and you have to do that in a vacuum where you've got really, I mean, unless you've got a good partner that you're working off of, you're doing it all on your own, and you're even imagining in a lot of instances the response from the person you're reading lines with. I don't know how you do it. Much respect. Like for us, we know if we
I
suck.
appreciate that. I think it's an interesting idea, and I'm going to guess and I'm going to posit that when you guys are covering a song, whether it's your dad's or somebody else's, and it's not yours, you putting yourself in the character of that song, right? You're telling that story.
Sometimes,
sometimes,
yeah,
okay.
a story, because there are different types of songs. If you're doing a pop song, you're going through the melody. You're kind of channeling what it's making you feel like, and that just comes
Right.
out. If you're telling a story song, there's a narration that you have to kind of get through and tell that story, convey that part. I studied acting for a couple of years in LA, and I never really went past having a couple of really heavy duty interviews. One of which was my stepfather, Mark Tinker. If you remember Grant Tinker's son?
Oh, I know Mark.
Yeah, so trying to read for some of his cop shows when Botchko's there, and he is too. The one thing that was cool about it was at the end of it, he said, "Man, you did a great job. You're just not effed up looking enough for the role." But kudos for coming in and doing that. And to be honest with you, I kind of felt like I succeeded enough in acting to kind of walk away from it and get back to the music full time. I missed my brother.
Right.
And I really it was the same thing that Gunnar was talking about. To put yourself in a mind space of trying to bring to life a scene and the words that somebody else created in their head. As songwriters, that's what we do, and it just seems like for us, it's kind of easier because we were in that moment when we created that song. If we do a cover song, which is rare, sometimes our dads will do it because we get a lot of requests for that. But we also grew up with him, watching him do it, and we're kind of him. So that made it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a cover band world, Patrick. We found, a lot of the original guys are either too old, retired, or whatever. And so, cover bands are out there and they're making a great living, entertaining people, which is totally fine. But Matthew and I grew up as writers because when we started out, obviously, we were, as the book would tell you, we started out at less than zero. It wasn't that we had a privilege behind us because of the nepotism that would open doors. It didn't work out that way at all. It was kind of the opposite. No one wants to attach themselves, especially, I don't know if it's the same thing at a film studio or TV studio. The people who they ascend to the top executive level, they make it an art to be at all of the meetings, all of the lunches, but never signing their name on something that they say they believe in. They're always present, but they don't want to risk too much.
In the music business, a record executive back in the day was if their name was on that dotted line and it failed, they got fired. So it was amazing to watch a lot of these people tap dance around. They're at all the parties. They're at the Palm. They're doing the whole thing. Hey, I love you, babe. Everything's great. But you notice when it comes time to, fish or cut bait, they're just never available.
Yeah.
So we
that
wound up
happens
working
when you get a show that's like about to be canceled, and you start looking around and the craft service table doesn't have any food on it, and there's no executives, and like people are just sort of leaving the ship, right? Yeah, exactly.
We've been there when music styles kind of change and stuff.
Trust me, I want to talk about that because that seems to be like the world's biggest kind of switcheroo on you guys. But before we leave Ozzy and Harriet, here they're huge stars. They were on radio, then they create this show long before Ricky, right? They didn't even have the real Ricky on the show until later. Did your dad ever experience being you guys where Ozzy's the star and now he's the son of a famous person?
It's funny that you mentioned that. We actually have a filmed interview with Hedda Hopper, who was the kind of like gossip,
the Barbara Walters before.
Correct. And it was really charming because she's sitting there with a 16-year-old Ricky Nelson.
He had just had his very first hit record that he sang on Ozzy and Harriet live, by the way. He didn't lip sync.
He did I'm Walking, and Hedda Hopper's sitting there backstage at one of his very first shows and says, well, your father was such a success in music. Are you going to be disappointed, Rick, if you don't measure up and if you're not as successful as your father was in music?
And our dad handled that question so gracefully. It was kind of, it's like what we call the backdoor bitch. It's kind of like, you're never going to be as big as your dad, right? That kind of thing.
Right,
so
right.
But our pop is very, he just kind of smiled a little bit. And he said, well, ma'am, I'm going to do the best I possibly can. All I can do is try to make the best music I can and hope that people like it. And I'm not going to quit. I'm just going to see what happens with it. And he wound up selling 500 million records in his career. I mean, he's in the top 10 of all-time selling pop music artists. He did it very quietly. Elvis was an extrovert. Ricky was an introvert. And they actually really, it was a symbiotic thing. They were both really good friends. But, our dad was the quintessential California, Hollywood millionaire kid that, was on a TV show, but he had the goods. And that was the thing, too. When it came down to it, this was an era where you would record on Friday after shooting all day. And it was on the radio on Monday. I mean, it was immediate.
There's a story you guys tell about talking to Grandma, which I just love. Just Grandma happens to be, Harriet Nelson.
Was that the humbling moment where she told us how they used to record?
Yeah. Could you tell that story? It's just such a great lesson.
Well, we were making our second record, and our grandmother had the family had a house down in Laguna Beach. It was actually the first house on Victoria Beach. And she was there. Grandpa had passed.
It was their weekend beach house cottage thing. They'd escaped from the soundstage.
So we were having a conversation, and we were basically based out of there while we were doing all of the overdubs on the second record. And she said, boys, why is it taking you so long to finish this record? You've been at it for a couple of months. What's going on? And we said, well, Grandma, we're trying to teach her how to make records. Well, Grandma, we have to do the overdubs and this. We're waiting for this musician to come in and all that stuff. And we gotta put it all together and then we gotta mix it. Why? How long did it take you guys to make your records in the big band days? She went, about 2 hours. And 2 hours? How many songs? 12. What?
She said, yeah. And then we'd go and do a show that night. I mean, they would literally roll in. There was no, so that's the thing that people don't understand. They would mic it up. There was no fixing it in the mix. There were no computers. You either had it,
no second
or
chances. You threw it down and you went and you did it. And we always jokingly say in our live show that this was all before auto-tune. This is all before unlimited track counts. This is all before the production trick.
No, and AI now.
Before every idiot in a dorm room called himself a producer. Back then people used to really have to have talent. You couldn't tune it. Like Miley Cyrus could never happen, all due respect, back in the 30s. It just wouldn't happen. Mm-mm. And we've gone away from that, which is kind of a shame. But now it's really more of a live thing, which we love. We love playing live. And back to that whole connection thing, we knew that half of the family was very strong in acting. And we always really respected that. But we always really gravitated towards what our father did when we were growing up. You mentioned the Laurel Canyon scene. When you have Beatles living next door. I mean, our Uncle George was George Harrison, and Mama Cass was our babysitter, and people were always coming and going because that whole scene up there in Laurel Canyon was really cool.
I hate to interrupt, but this is something when I'm reading a book I wanted to ask, and now I get to.
Yeah.
So these are great stories, and of course, George Harrison, Beatle, Mama Cass, babysitter. But as a kid, obviously, they would probably sing there because I know that's kind of the way it was going.
Yeah.
Were you aware? Did you hear their music on the radio and know who they were? It was just around the house.
Well, you got to think, to a kid doesn't know what fame is, Patrick. They really don't.
No.
They don't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just they're normal, So you go, oh, okay, I'm going to a set today, and I've got 2 scenes I've got to prepare for and all that stuff. But that's your normal. You just grow up doing that, and you don't know how special that really is.
We didn't know that our dad was a big deal until you mentioned Buckley, where we went to school, which is a private school in Sherman Oaks. We had to dress up in the little outfits with the ties and the whole deal and all that stuff. But we didn't know that our dad was a big deal until they had a parent-teacher night at Buckley, and all of the teachers started frantically putting their makeup on when they heard Ricky Nelson was coming. It's like, I didn't know they looked like that, like at all,
So, but we thought, look, around our house, it's really honestly the truth. I mean, everybody seemed to have an acoustic guitar in their hand. They were writing a song. You were expected to be able to break into 3-part harmony at a moment's notice. It's just, it was our normal. It wasn't that big of a deal.
So if this is your normal, then does your dad take you aside or your mom or whoever? I read the book, so maybe not your mom, but your dad or somebody, maybe Mark or grandma, explain to you the legacy that you're
Not at all.
No.
Not at all.
See, it's like, as far as Mark was concerned.
I don't know. I hate to say it, but that's not good relativing. You should at least warn these kids. Hey, guys, we're not any different, but guess what? All this stuff has happened.
But you got to think about it. It's in our case, it wasn't like our dad was famous. It was our grandparents on both sides and our dad and our uncle who was playing at the time. He was quarterback at UCLA. He hadn't really gotten into the acting thing yet. So for us, we never saw or experienced really anything that was out of the ordinary, except for every time we went out to dinner with our family, people would ask for autographs at the end. We thought that was like after the dessert course was the autograph course, But other than that, they never acted any different.
Yeah, our family, what was cool, if you've been doing it for that long, you don't get affected. Your head doesn't get affected by it. It's just kind of part of it.
No, but I get that part. I get that because people ask me the same, and it's like, well, same with being adopted or being a twin. It's like that's all you've ever known, so that's all you know.
That's it.
But have you guys got kids on both sides, right? As far as have you kind of sat down with those people and explained to them what the hell is this all about, or is it just sort of it's just sort of?
I came out of the gate gangbusters. I named my kid Ozzy. So basically, he doesn't stand a chance.
No pressure or anything, right?
It's funny. Everybody that meets him thinks he's got the coolest name in grammar school, but you say it's actually my great grandfather's name, and it's a family name. And our grandpa Ozzy was probably the most accomplished Swedish guy aside from our dad we ever met. People loved him. All these years later, he basically, if you notice, and we wrote this in the book, Ozzy and Harriet ran 435 episodes, 14 years. It also had 400 and almost 500 episodes of a radio show that was almost concurrent for the first 3 years, completely different script. I mean, I don't know when he slept because he was in control of all of it.
He wrote, produced, edited, directed,
as a person
who
writes and acts and stuff. That was a piece of info I didn't know. I was blown away. And you make the connection, and the direct connection I made was Ricky Ricardo, was Desi Arnaz.
Well, they were the only 2 people I think that negotiated because it was early, owning their own shows. Our grandfather decided to pay a little bit of his salary in order to own the films because he never foresaw digital or copying. He figured if he had control of the 35 millimeter films, nobody could copy it. And during COVID, we wound up as a family restoring the 35 millimeter film. So now the show is available in 4K.
That's how you did it. They shot it on film.
They shot it on film.
Well, see,
that's the savior right there.
But that was a typical Ozzy. Think about it. Like the Honeymooners back in the day was shot on kinescope and it looked like crap.
Yeah.
And he and Harriet went to go see a current movie at the time, which was From Here to Eternity. And he loved the way it looked. So he researched who the director of photography was, and he hired that guy for the entire run of Ozzie and Harriet. Spent 5 times the going rate of a DP on a.
Well, he never really understood why TV had to look so crappy, you know. And I loved I Love Lucy.
You were really young when you lost your grandpa, though, right?
We were
he
10.
Was just grandpa.
10.
You did, yeah. So it's not like later. I mean, I know you could talk to your grandma. She was around for a lot longer.
She was sharp too, Patrick. She was.
I bet.
There was nothing simple about Harriet Hilliard. She was
a bigger star than Ozzie was for a while. She was making movies with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. Ginger Rogers was her best friend, and Lucille actually Ball. So, you know, you can imagine these 3 unbelievable women hanging out. I mean, can you imagine a lunch with those days?
Yeah, Lucille Ball, Ginger Rogers, and Harriet Nelson, man. How cool.
I did a movie where I played her nephew. I was in the movie Mame, and I spent a week with Lucille Ball. And, like, she was like, my little Patrick. She called me her little Patrick. Hey, little Patrick, come here. I got to talk to you.
That's a good Lucille, by the way.
Thank you.
A little bit, yeah.
Smoked a little bit. But she would do this thing where I would come in. I was like, I don't know, 6. It was just ridiculous. And it's like same thing with like Harrison. I don't know, but you talk to these people because that's who you know they are.
Yeah,
and I was aware. You know, we're in the business. I'm talking to Lucille Ball, and she's on a TV show. And I saw the episode last night, and I talked to her about her episode from last night, which was in the 50s. It wasn't last night. It was just on last night.
Sure, right.
And she would go through every. You know, like, oh, when I stepped on the grapes and when I ate the chocolates and I wanted to know everything.
Oh, Vitamita Vegemin, baby.
We'll be back. You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you might not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. They make it super simple. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with coverage options tailored to your choices. Plus, you'll see which discounts you may qualify for, like the online quote discount or savings for paying in full. In fact, 99% of Progressive Auto customers earn at least one discount. See if you could save when you switch to Progressive. You'll feel good about making a savvy choice. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little extra cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
After these messages, have you ever thought about becoming an actor and making your friends and family jealous? Well, have I got a deal for you. Here at Working Actors School, we offer many different classes so you can become a famous actor like me. And we have a delightful selection of classes, including Adult Weekly. It's every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Here you will learn how to be an actor with other adults. How do we do it? How is it possible? Is it a miracle? Yes, it is. A miracle called Zoom. We teach everything online so you can become a famous actor and impress your friends and family. So if you want to be a famous actor and make your friends and family jealous, then you need to sign up at Working Actors School. You can get a hold of us at workingactorschool.com. You can sign up for classes at workingactorschool.com. You can make a reservation for the class online at workingactorschool.com. So come check us out. It's workingactorschool.com. Act 2, Success. Okay, so let's talk about Nelson. So Nelson happens to be you guys.
Yeah.
And
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
All right,
Very
cool.
pleasure. Yeah.
You know, the thing that did surprise me was I'm a big unabashed hair metal fan, and you kind of give the distinction of like, we're not hair metal, and I'm kind of rolling my eyes when I'm hearing that, and I'm like, but then you give a really good definition of it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of really, they do make sense that they're not hair metal, but you're in that melange of that era.
Yeah, right. Sure.
And that you were like club rats. You were like at Wong's West. You were doing all of the stuff that, you know, a band would do in this town. And it's almost like the guy that I just had a friend of mine who is a buddy of mine, whose name is Noah Blake. He's an actor. Mm-hmm. And his dad is Robert Blake, you know, from Beretta. Mm-hmm. And it's like I said, you know, Noah, if there's whatever the opposite word of nepotism is, it seems like that's what you are. And I feel the same way with you guys. It's sort of like you did everything you could to just be musicians, and everything was stacked against you because no one seemed to want to help you along the way until the most tragic moment in your life. And then all of a sudden the world's like the eye of Sauron is focused on you.
For the wrong reasons.
Yeah, for the wrong reasons.
Right. For reasons that have nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why we pulled the plug. You know, we actually had to go away for a while and kind of reassess our lives. I mean, think about this. You're 18 years old. You finally reconnected permanently with your father because they had a Hollywood divorce and we were forced to live with our mom. And let's just say that was challenging. You read the book,
Read the book. It's not challenging. These
yeah.
guys went through a lot, and they're being very, very honorable by not giving way more detail that I'm sure exists. But
Well, Gunnar said it best in the forward. I think he said, some people, especially our mother, wouldn't be so happy with what we wrote in this book, but she should, because we could have written a whole lot more. But
yeah.
But that's the whole point, is we had to get our heads together. And the truth was, we were very fortunate in that we realized that nobody really, truly, at the deepest level, it went beyond nobody owes us anything. It was,
right.
We got this kind of just whatever it is, it's stacked against us. So the only way that we're going to get through this is looking at things differently and trying to create a reality for ourselves, not in denial, but that we've got to find and mine our breaks when we get them and make the most out of them. And if somebody says no, we have to say, okay, no for now, but we're going to figure out a way through it. We don't quit. That is really something that is in the family. We don't give up. I guess.
So you assign that to the family, because my idea when I'm listening to you guys talk is, you say it yourself, less than zero. It's sort of like, not only do you have to prove yourself as individuals, but then you have to prove that you're not there because of your family.
Sure.
And then you come up with this positive attitude, which, where does that come from? From such, I'm sorry, but a mother like that's so dark. And when your dad's out on the road, that's what you got. It's hard.
It's a good question, because Gunnar wrote a chapter about that.
Honestly, there's a whole chapter devoted to something we called the lost year. And the answer to that question is, we tried it the other way. We always were good guys. And, this is long in high school, was long before the term being in the friend zone came up. But Matthew and I were always the sweet, positive, supportive guys that all the hot girls would want to come and talk to. And they'd want to talk about their dirtbag boyfriends. And we make them feel better about it. And they go, okay, I'm going to carry on. I'm going to soldier on and screw that guy, and then go right back to the guy. So that was basically how we wrote that song, Love and Affection, was coming from, being on the outside looking in.
And from the friend zone, yeah.
But, honestly, we tried it the other way. When our dad died, we had just realized that, all the girls wanted to be with all the guys that treated them like shit, and having a best friend like Jonathan Gilbert, who had some challenges. He was always a beautiful guy, but let's just say we treated women differently. And they all seemed to be like completely addicted to that. And we tried.
I'm laughing because you actually treated them like what you're saying horribly, but we're like the most honest guy about it. you were always open and honest about, hey, this is exactly what I'm expecting, and that's all there is.
Yeah,
it wasn't even like there was no trauma.
He stopped short of saying, I'm going to leave a few dollars on the nightstand. I know you're not a whore, but,
But, we tried it the other way. For that lost year, our dad died. The press was awful. We found out that the family was millions in debt. And it was really kind of sink or swim time. And, I think what happened, we got a little tiny life insurance payout that was like $100,000 to split between the two of us. And
that's criminal, by the way. That chapter and mom and all that stuff is.
It was pretty bad. It really was. It was pretty bad. But we had each other, which was really cool. But no one prepared us for anything. We got sent to private school, but our parents came from that generation where they were just focused on themselves. So when we turned 18, and our dad died 3 months after we turned 18, it was over for us. So we had to really decide what to do. And,
I forgot to say that when we went to a private school, I remember getting pulled out of my final exams because the bill hadn't gotten paid. So it was like one of those things. Again, and these are our problems, poor. But I'm just saying, when you're the only kid in front of 40 others that are taking their test, can you come with me to the office? Your parents haven't paid your bill. You can't take the test. That kind of thing. It got a little rocky there with their divorce and all that stuff. Gunnar and I look back on this and say we needed each other. God brought us in together, because I think that's kind of why we did okay. We could bounce things off. I knew his crap. I knew I'd been through it with him. I was the only person, like you said, people on a sound stage, same thing.
But to stay on point, we tried being those dirtbag guys for like a year. We handled our grief differently. Fortunately, we didn't turn to drugs and alcohol. We weren't like Hollywood kid statistics, and we didn't do that. Man, I went through a lot of women in a year. I just really did. I really just didn't care for the first time in my life. I really didn't care. And we got to the end of that year. We'd spent through that little bit of money that we had, And Matt and I found each other. There's a whole chapter on it in the book, sitting opposite each other at a picnic table at the Ocotillo Lodge in Palm Springs. We had nothing in the bank. We had no prospects for the future. We were destitute at that point, and we were broken every way you could be. And we sat across each other, and Matt looks at me and he goes, I got to ask you this. Are you happy? And I said, I'm miserable, man. I don't like being this guy at all. He said, man, I'm miserable too. And we picked up the phone. We called our dad's manager, Greg McDonald at the time. He lived in Palm Springs. He came down, picked us up. And we just decided in that moment that no matter what it took, we were going to turn our lives around and we were going to be who we realized we always really were, which were those positive guys. That's why we named the first album After the Rain. You know, we'd been through quite a storm.
Uh-huh.
And we just realized that.
And there were a lot of people out there that identify with that as well.
Yeah.
And we weren't the only ones.
Well, I identify with it, and it's like the idea of, you know, look, people lose their parents, and people lose their parents suddenly, and so that respect that happens a lot. What doesn't happen a lot is then the press and the world coming down on you for the loss of your father, which you guys had to deal with, and then it's amazing to me on a couple of levels. One, that, and maybe it's the brother thing, that who else could have asked you, are you happy? And you not go, yeah, I'm fine. But you had to answer him honestly. So I think that's part of it.
Sure.
And then the other thing, which like really I'm fascinated by, is I understand there's a large extended family, and I understand that you know, people are individuals and they do their own different things. But one thing people don't get is, Ozzy and Harriet, Rick Nelson, Mark Harmon, all of it. Oh, there must be money galore.
Sure.
It doesn't work like that, guys.
Yeah.
It's like, you know that, but it's like money goes.
Well,
and it's like, it just rolls around. So at the end of all of this, these two 18-year-old kids you're responsible for your dad's legacy, $4 million in debt.
4.5. But who's counting?
Fuck.
But who's counting?
No,
Yeah.
you, the accountants and the guys that are owed, that's for sure. So that's a lot of responsibility, again, not of your making, that you took on out of the honor of your father and your family's name, which I think a lot of also people can relate to. I can, like, I don't want my father's name to be, you know, disrespected. But
Well, we owed it to him, Patrick. When you think about it, we really did. We owed it to him because you think about it. Look, he was told for years with his financial condition. Our mother was awful, and she spent through the family fortune. Yes, at one point there was a lot of family money because Ozzy was a flippin' genius, and he made sure that they always got paid by their main sponsors throughout the years, half in cash, half in stock. Who were the major sponsors?
Sweet.
General Electric, General Motors, Coca-Cola, and Kodak. Okay, so
oh my God.
When they ended the show, there was a pile of money. And had our dad not been a perpetual child, which he was, you know, he was basically raised on a film set with no responsibilities. He didn't know how to write a check, like literally didn't know how to physically write a check.
We always say this, when our grandfather Ozzy died, the rudder on the Nelson family ship was gone and the ship foundered. It was that simple.
Yeah, he was that powerful of a presence. And there was a giant vacuum that was created. Our dad basically went on the road forever. This was also, too, like starting in the late 70s, early 80s, back when cocaine wasn't addictive, you know?
Yeah.
Right. You know, and
The perfect drug.
And we were all latchkey kids anyways because of the generation thing. You know, divorce was rampant. Our family was victim to that, too. And because of that, one income wasn't going to do it. So technically, both parents had to do their thing. Our mom's job was strip mining our dad with no regard to what that was going to do to the kids, because that was never really a consideration.
You know, the book was almost titled The Boys Have Each Other, because that was kind of the catchphrase.
Right.
You know, don't worry about the boys. They've got each other.
Yeah, in our family, you know, there were four kids, and it was like, you know, everybody was concerned about Tracy. Everybody was concerned about Sam, but don't worry about the boys. They've got each other. And you know, honestly,
you get told that enough, you realize, hey,
but they were, but they were right.
Yeah,
you know, they really were right. And back to you know paying off the debts and doing that whole thing. You know, we woke up at 18, making some very adult decisions, having to like right away. And what we realized with our father, look, it's normal for any son to deify their deceased father. But our dad was really a great guy. He fell short on the father side of things a little bit, but only because he wasn't equipped, because his father was such a father that, kind of skipped a little bit of a generation. And I understand
We
that.
never doubted that he loved us. He told us all the time. We had a great relationship with him.
But he didn't leave us, a tidy situation at all.
Right.
But here's what he did do. He didn't declare bankruptcy when he was counseled to do that for a decade by every financial advisor. It's like the divorce has ruined your family. You don't have the resources. Just declare bankruptcy and you get a fresh start and you get some breathing room, Rick. And for our sakes, he didn't do that. He thought that was dishonorable. And he also said that unlike everybody else, you declare bankruptcy in our family. If you're Ricky Nelson and you declare bankruptcy like you should have, all of your IP, your name and likeness rights, your percentage of Ozzie and Harriet, the fourth of Ozzie and Harriet, your song publishing, everything goes into that pool to be bought by outsiders. So he held on and held on and held on.
In our case, it was kind of bigger than us. It was actually protecting Ozzie and Harriet, protecting our dad. And then we got to ourselves. And trust me, Gunnar and I were good at racking up our own debt in the music business. We sold millions of records and came home worse than we were when we left. But that's how the accounting works. We didn't really know the full of it.
Right.
We heard stories about it. And we thought, we've been through this before because, of our dad and stuff. We were smart guys, I think, smart-ish. And we had really good people around us. But at the end of the day, you realize that if you just close your eyes for a second, in our case, we went on the road for 13 months and we're never allowed to see the books until we came back and realized, oh my God, we're really upside down.
It happens when you have 45 employees when you're 18 years old.
Right. And if people don't understand, and I understood this a little bit because of relationships, but in the music industry, all of the come in here, boy, have a cigar, it's going to go far, where they're giving you wads of cash, is not their cash, it's your future cash.
It's your cash.
And so you're borrowing money from your future self.
But but at loan shark rates, you can't leave
Right.
that out. You're not recouping at a 1-to-1 thing. Like a record deal, if you're lucky back in that day, you had 6% of every dollar that came in. 6%.
And not only 6%, it was 3/4 of 6%.
Indeed. So let's say you're at 4% for every dollar that comes in. So you're not paying back, let's say you make $1, you get to pay back $1 that they charged you for. You're paying it back at 4 cents. So that dollar,
unless you have a worldwide phenomenon, you're never going to get over
unless you're Britney
that
Spears,
debt.
man. Unless you're Britney Spears or Taylor Swift.
Right.
It's just the way it is. Now, the record companies and the advisors and the support systems, back then it was something called a rack jobber, which was all the people who kind of warehoused your albums, because the industry back then, it's important to note, was about selling albums. That's how we all remunerated ourselves. It was selling
physical
records.
media, the actual record itself.
Right. So we would give away shows. We'd do promotional shows just to sell the records. Then Napster happened and the whole thing flipped. So now you're giving away the records, which have become commercials basically, because you can't monetize that, and you're making all of your money doing shows. And that's finally caught up to our industry now too, as of the last
but then
month.
the managers who are vampires, then they create the 360 deal where they're just taking percentages of everything you make, because
But they leave something
apparently
out.
It's not working.
We have great
they
friends
leave?
we have great friends who run record companies, and I had dinner with a really good friend a couple days ago, and she mentioned, she runs a record label. She mentioned, we just do 360 deals. I said, well, do you advance $200 million up front too? She goes, what do you mean? I said, well, the 360 deal came from the Madonna deal with Live Nation. And people leave that part of it out. Oh, yeah. See, they gave Madonna $200 million
Up front.
And that was 20 years ago. So that was,
That
was a lot of money. And if someone gave me the equivalent of $400 million, I'd say, please take a percentage of everything I make. But nowadays, it's become the standard in our industry, the 360 deal, where they take a percentage of your T-shirt sales, of your touring, basically everything you do that they have nothing to do with, really. And they leave out the fact that they didn't pay that artist the $200 million for the privilege of doing that. It's just become the new normal. So
I actually was one of the speakers at a music symposium in Santa Monica a few years ago. I was like the only artist representing artists, and there were 3 guys from labels. One guy was such a smug a-hole. I just sat there and just waited and waited and waited. And he's talking all about this 360 deal, this, and we take a piece from here. And like I'm sitting here looking at this douche going, I don't see you on stage with those guys. You haven't given up your
Right.
family to go out for a year. And then at the end, the moderator said, Matt, do you have anything to say? And I said, I sure do. And I stood up and I leveled this douchebag. I mean, I went right through it. I mean, he crawled out of that room when I was done with him, because when you've been on the other side of it and you realize that these are predatory people, and as Gunnar said, you try to be a great guy in a horrible business. We knew the business was horrible. We saw what it did to people,
Yeah.
including our dad and including us. But to walk out of there and realize this, and we say this in the book, it comes down to this. We've had an incredible journey so far, and we're not done. The places we've gone, the people that we have met, the things that we have done, even people like, I hate to say it, Jonathan Gilbert, my best friend at the time, looking in the car when I'm about to go play at Wong's West saying, you know that you're never going to do anything with this. You're never going to be as big as your dad. Why don't you just quit?
Jeez.
And I looked at him, I said, you know what? I think you're wrong. And I'm going to prove that you're wrong, man. I think I can do this with my brother. We're going to make this happen. And, a few years later, we were the number one band in the world. We had the number one song in the world. The only time in history that 3 successive generations in a family have had number one hit records on the Billboard charts. So
That's crazy.
Yeah,
you can do it.
I actually, it sounds like we're complaining, and we're not at all. We're really not. We
No,
feel
you guys are so far into your own, like making sure, but no, it doesn't sound like you're complaining at all. It sounds in the book and what you're saying now, it sounds like just a real honest estimation of you can. I think your dad said it, or maybe your grandma, but someone said it like this to me as well. Stuff will happen in life. It's your choice to how you respond to it.
100%.
Only thing you got control over. Yeah.
Right.
Indeed.
And so, well, it's your dad's lyric.
Yeah.
You got to please yourself.
Yeah.
And so it's that aspect of it which allows you to still be here, because I know guys that were at the height of, we lost Janie Lane because of this, at the height of their powers, and then they lose track of what's happening because a new music comes in and they're no longer popular. It doesn't change the music, it just changed the...
I think it comes down to this. It's the reason why was not strong enough. Yeah. And it's made our reason why has made us unstoppable. And let me explain that. I look at our career, and we say this in the book as well. Imagine that someone came to us all those years ago when we were 18, and they said, okay, guys, you can make a choice to be the most successful musical artist in the world for about a year and a half. Everybody's going to know your songs. You're going to put your family in the Guinness Book. You're going to go number one. You are going to literally change and save lives through your music. But it's going to cost you your minds, your bodies, millions of dollars that you're going to spend 30 years paying back. It will bring you not only to the edge of death, but you'll actually die a couple of times and be brought back. Jeez. What do you say? And Matthew and I, without a blink, would go, let's go. Let's do this. We would do it all over again.
We would.
Because our reason why is fueled by things like, I've got a stack of letters in my safe that I write about. One letter in particular. Yeah. And it's from this young lady who at the time was 14 years old. And she wrote this letter back in the day. She had spent that entire Wednesday going to school and giving away her favorite possessions to all of her friends, because that afternoon was the afternoon she was going to end her life. And she went back home, and her stepfather was gone for the day, and he had left his gun unlocked, and she had his .38 on her lap. And she's sitting in the living room trying to muster up the courage, and she had MTV playing on in the background just to keep her company. It was right at that moment that our video for our song After the Rain came up. And it was about a kid who was despondent and abused, who escaped into music and woke up after it thinking that it was just a dream. And it turned out not to be. And it was all about hope and giving them hope. She saw that video in that moment. And for some reason, it inspired her to pick up the phone and call the suicide prevention hotline. And it saved her life. And she wrote me that story. Matthew and I carried that letter tattered. I had it in my pocket for decades. And whenever I was feeling down, I'd pull that letter out and I would read it. And it's in my safe to this day. 6 weeks ago, we were playing in upstate New York. And someone came back and got me backstage and said, "Hey, there's a young lady here, and she told me a little story. I think you need to meet her." And we weren't meeting and doing a meet and greet that night, but he was very compelling and adamant. I went out there and I met that little girl who's no longer 14, obviously, and she introduced me to her grandkids.
Oh, man.
And so I sat there thinking, decades to pay back our own debt that we accrued. Being pariahs overnight through no fault of our own, just music taste changed, but we represented a particular era. And the misperceptions that we addressed in this book were still rampant at the time. And just meeting her made all of the darkest moments where no one would ever know about the second guessing and the dark thoughts and all that, made it all worth it.
And we have honestly, we have a lot of those stories, so for when Gunnar said that, you have to wake up every morning with a purpose, and we remember those things. We talk about it in the book, this little girl, she was fighting cancer, and she actually, we met her.
Don't even get me started. I was bawling like a little baby.
I can't even relate the story because Aaron Vallerly.
It's an amazing story that you tell beautifully in the book, and recommend the book and that story. It's unbelievable.
But the reason why, and Janie was a friend, the reason why Janie died the way he did is because his reason why was not even remotely what our reason why has always been.
You say it, fame doesn't equal love, and I think
it doesn't.
Understand that.
Records sold, money, chicks, all that stuff, access. It's all bullshit, man. It's all it's a house of cards, and Matthew and I really believe what we write about and what we sing about. We always have. It's really who we are. We're not playing characters, and I think that's what really separated us from a lot of our friends who were in hair bands back in the day. Matthew and I started playing clubs a decade earlier. And we started out writing our own tunes and doing that. We got marketed a certain way, and we did have fabulous hair, and no one rocked assless chaps like Matthew Nelson.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
For real. And these are all our buddies, and we love it. And we play shows on similar bills with the Warrants, Wingers, Poison, Slaughters, all that stuff all the time.
Right.
And we love that music. We really do. It's just our reality was just different. We started way earlier than most of those people. And we started in LA clubs when everyone had a skinny tie and a "the" before their name. Mm-hmm. And
when you describe how the punks were like really righteous and the new romantics were the real trash pandas of the music scene, I really related to that, because it was that time where I was going as a fan, just going to the different clubs.
Sure.
The Starwood and
it was
Longs
tribal, wasn't it? It was really tribal. The only people who got the hall pass we talked about the other day were the rockabillys, because the punks thought they were cool and the pop guys thought they were cool,
Right.
But it was a great, very eclectic time in music where no one wanted to sound like anybody else. They wanted a unique identity. And
that's before the hairband thing, because everybody wanted to be Bon Jovi.
When in the hairband thing, the difference was everybody wanted to be Motley Crue or they wanted to be Bon Jovi or whatever. In the earlier scene in LA, it was all about being special and different and unique.
Well, let's talk about the MTV, because I mean, it's not, you can't talk about you without the MTV, because you guys, I'm explaining it to you, you guys were so huge, so quick, and then gone so fast, so brutally. Walk us through that for all of us who didn't. When I was watching MTV and seeing your video 18 times a day and singing along, what's it like on the other end?
It was, I'll be honest with you, we never got the nod from our record company. We talk about that in the book. Gunnar and I had been around long enough, going to the meetings, to realize that the only thing that would work is to try to find a representative, an A&R guy, that's what they call them, at a label that wasn't going anywhere because he had too much juice to be fired. Remember we talked about anybody that signs on that line? Gunnar and I honestly thought it was going to take us 3 or 4 albums to just even get any noise at all. And we wound up researching and finding a guy through a couple of people named John Kolodner. His name kept coming up. John Kolodner worked at Geffen Records. He he was a legend in the A&R business. He put.
I'm not in the business, and I knew who he was.
Yeah, he put Aerosmith back together. He signed
AC/DC to their first deal.
Wow. So he was a photographer turned A&R guy, and he just had something about him that he could call talent. And we knew that he also had a tendency to develop talent. So we thought, okay, this is the guy. Gunnar and I were already really we had kind of Gunnar came off the drums because in the club days he was a drummer, like a savant drummer, and he decided to come up front with me and sing. I'm glad he did. Actually, I used to sing what he is now his part, and I actually flipped and started singing harmony. It was very much like the Bee Gees had something like that, like an accidental, oh, that's the sound. It happened in the studio, same thing.
30% more chicks when you're a guitar player up front. By the way, just let you know.
So Gunnar and I, we courted a relationship with John Kolodner, and he kind of kept us on ice for a couple days, a couple of years actually, gave us a couple of dollars. I'm talking like $100 a demo to go into the studio in the Valley and record what we were writing. And we started writing with some other people, learning the craft of songwriting. After doing all the club stuff and having all the gear, we learned that having a hit song is the beginning and the end of it.
And no one was going to give us one either.
Right. So we had to
starting out. You have to do it yourself.
We couldn't just write songs. We had to write hits. And so that's what we learned how to do. And it took us years to do it. We traveled to England. We went all over the place working with people that were better than us. Just like you do, you mentor and you learn. Well, John got very busy because Aerosmith absolutely exploded. They had their Permanent Vacation album, then Pump.
Yeah.
They had all this stuff was happening. And here
the Whitesnake record was big too. He was also handling them. So like Still of the Night was happening.
Night and Is This Love and all that whole thing. So Kolodner and let me see, Elton John was his as well. Cher was a big deal. Same thing. All this stuff were his acts. And you've got Matt and Gunnar Nelson kind of one step beyond a concept, trying to get some air there and at least a release window. We had an aborted attempt at our first album with some named producers that completely crapped the bed. We almost we did get dropped for a couple of days, talked our way back into it, said, look, you loved our demos with the guy we're co-writing with, let him produce the album. You pick the engineer of your choice to mix the album and to be there to facilitate. The reality of it was Gunnar and I wound up doing it ourselves because
you give great detail in the book. It's like they just sort of wander away. I mean, one guy had issues with his family, which I get, but the other one was just sort of like leaving you there.
He got groovy.
And again, it's sort of like it's like the little what's the old fairy tale about the shoemaker? The shoes end up there, and they don't. The idea being that no one is believing that you guys are playing your instruments, singing your voices, producing your records, or writing your songs.
It's our karma,
and you're doing all of it.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing that people don't teach men in general, which a good father does. No one is coming to save you.
Yeah.
No one is coming to save you. So you are on your own. And like I said, when we turned 18, no one had instilled that in us yet. We didn't really know that. We kind of assumed that in no short time. But you have to make for yourself. We've had faith in each other through the whole thing, which has always been great. And here at 58, which means Matthew's freaking old, we're still here doing it. We got a new Nelson record coming up in January, and I can honestly say it's knocking on the door being the strongest thing we've ever done. I know everyone's in love with their most recent project, but this is really good.
But I mean, and also you guys, I'm looking at your tour dates. It's like you're like your dad. You're always on the road. It's not like you've never rested on a laurel that you ever had.
He did 300 nights a year, Patrick. He did 300 nights a year. I mean, he was gone a lot. We're in a better shape than that. And we just got back from playing a festival in Milan with Night Ranger, and it was awesome. I'm talking, 10,000 people going completely nuts. And what's really weird is how we're perceived overseas is completely different than in the United States. Here, like you were mentioning MTV, we wound up basically, we wound up finagling our break because nobody was giving us any attention at the label. They're too busy with juggernaut artists. We got a phone call that we could fill in on Dial MTV, their call-in show, like their top 10 countdown, as hosts. Yeah. And they said, whatever you guys do, don't bring guitars. We brought guitars. They said, whatever you do, don't play between bumps. We played between bumps. And by the end of the week, America knew us, and that's when they dropped our first single. It debuted at #1. That's why it happened overnight. It was almost like God just said, hey, you guys, you suffered enough. I'm going to give you a break. And everybody at the label had no idea. They didn't even know we were signed. So we sold out our first run of records in the first 3 days, I think. The entire run was done. And it was a phenomenon. We write in the book, we left for New York on, I think on a Wednesday. We came back on Monday for a scheduled in-store record signing thing at Licorice Pizza at the
over in the Galleria.
Yeah. And we showed up, and 3 layers of the gallery, all 3 were chock full of teenage girls screaming like we were the Beatles. And the police came and shut it down. That was our first in-store. And it was 2 years of that.
And the only difference was we did MTV for a week. We were the same guys.
Right.
You know,
Of
we
course.
had making the same music, and it was.
You know what? You'd be amazed at what television can do for a guy. You know?
What? That's interesting. But here, it goes right back to that same thing. For you guys, and you guys, you talk about it later about with the advent of grunge being on tour and not being aware. When you go off to do MTV, what people don't understand is you end up in a building with a couple of union guys who could care less about who you are or what you're doing.
Sure.
You're talking to a camera like we're talking to now. No one's on the other end saying it's going well or not.
Nope.
So you don't know any of if it's being broadcast, if
it's
anyone's
working,
watching, it's just the way it is. It's like if you were to be performing, if all of your live performances were done from the vocal booth in a studio where you don't see the audience and you don't have any connection. You
That's
say
true.
that too. It's like it's what you said. Your mom or your grandma. It's a business of connections. Without that connection. So one last question before we get to this whole thing. You lose your dad right before you guys are, I won't even say successful because that's not the point, but when you're writing a lot of songs together, do you ever think, this is a horrible question, do you ever think like, man, I wish I really could have showed some of the stuff that we've written to Dad?
Well,
Like-
we did a little bit when we were playing in clubs. We had a couple
Okay.
of ringers back in the day that he listened to, and called his manager, best friend Greg, and said, "Man, the boys have just written a hit, and they're only 14." So that was kind of nice to have a couple of those. But what we realized in playing the LA clubs was all of the bands seemed to have like that one song in their set of Suck that all the girls
Waited for
that one song for them to play. And so we kind of thought, well, we're not getting a lot of love by the industry in general. What if we spend the time and write an album that has 10 of those songs where it's
Right.
undeniable, where no one's having to wait through a bunch of deep cuts to get to the one that they want to know.
To the good one, yeah.
To
the
that
single.
good one. And that's the way we approach it. We still do to this day. We want to have, albums full of singles. We love writing songs and writing a Nelson record. It's cool because it really draws from both our love for arena rock and all that stuff that you loved growing up. But we also cut our teeth in that whole skinny tie pop thing in LA. And there's elements of both in what it is we do.
Even what happened with the whole hairband thing, that's why we always say we weren't really a hairband that way, because we never did spill beer on your girlfriend's type of songs. It was like
Right.
We also didn't come from like the 1-4-5 blues thing, which bands that we love like Motley Crue and AC/DC came from. You can sound rock
Well,
and tough.
I think you guys know this better than I do for sure. Amazingly, you had the best hair that was real. And that's probably why you're
Allegedly.
included in the hairband. Yeah, allegedly, I wouldn't know. So let's talk about we're at you do the MTV thing. You become this huge event. Your music's everywhere. It's overwhelming. I can't imagine what that's like. What is that experience to be? Friday you're working, Monday you're a rock star.
Surreal, especially because look, we've been working since we were 6. So to us, as Matthew mentioned, we thought it was going to be a number of records before we actually got any sunshine. So that part of it was really interesting. But fortunately, we prepared a lot. We'd rehearsed a lot. We thought about the image of the band. We had the greatest players backing us up. We had a great live show that was already rehearsed and ready to go. So fortunately, we'd done the preparation, but there was no guarantee at all that it was going to catch fire like it did.
So many bands that got even the money behind them and tour support or whatever that laid an egg. There was never a guarantee. It's
Right.
like releasing a movie. You don't know.
You have no idea.
Right, you have no idea. And
I mean,
so
we-
you
I mean,
find
we
yourself.
actually did
I
the-
remember it was at this time we were doing summer school, and Mark was telling me about your band, and he was like, "No, they're really good." I'm like, all right, okay.
You know what's funny
And
is
it's like-
we hear a lot of that. We hear, "Hey, I talked to your uncle, and he was saying really nice things about you." Now the thing about Mark is he's pretty old school. He's a lot like his dad. Old football
Oh, he'll never tell you to your face.
No, and it took us again, 58 years old. It's taken me all this time to realize that, he never tells you to your face.
Yeah.
But it's such a compliment to hear from a guy that's, the one thing I got to say about Uncle Mark, he works really hard. He's very disciplined. Very disciplined. He takes what he does very, very seriously. We all come from the same school of like Coach John Wooden and the Pyramid of Success and principles and all that. That's how the two of us were raised. So I think that's really helped quite a bit.
He kind of hipped us to John Wooden, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, so.
On the side here, it's interesting. Obviously, there's no doubt about it. You guys resemble your dad, Ricky. But Sam looks so much like Mark, I can't get over it.
Yeah,
it's just amazing to me.
Certain ages, man, he looked a lot like our dad. Yeah. I mean, he really did.
Okay.
He did.
I'm like the spitting image of our mother, which is kind of a double whammy.
And all of a sudden, my hair is like growing in curly like Grandpa Ozzy. So weird. I don't know what happened, but.
And by the way, speaking of family, I hate to do this, but Gunner's, I'm gonna have to tap out to pick my kid up at school. Okay.
Yeah, but
I'm so sorry. I'm running late.
No, I'm right here. I'm right here.
I'm going to continue, but I really don't want to be that guy that leaves his kid on the curb. So I will be hopefully talking to you again really soon. And by the way, I've really been excited to do this and talk to you. I love your podcast.
Thank you.
I think you're great.
Oh, thank you.
And let's do this again.
That means so much. Absolutely. We'll be back after these messages. Hey there, I'm Patrick Labyorteaux, and I've been an actor since I was a little kid. So I know what it's like to be a little kid actor. So I have a class here called Youth Weekly, and that meets every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, and it is an awesome class if you are young and want to learn all about acting. We have a great set of kids, and it's taught on Zoom, so you can do it from anywhere. You can do it on your phone, you can do it on your laptop, on an iPad. It's awesome. I've had kids take a class while they were in the car coming back from soccer practice. I swear to you. So if acting is in your blood, come to workingactorschool.com and check out the Youth Weekly class every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific. I'll see you there. Act 3, present day. The idea of when I'm reading your book, it was like, I just felt like I knew you guys because of all the different areas that we kind of crossed paths but never did.
Well, the epicenter of our childhood, Patrick, was really the Gilbert house. Tracy, our sister, was best friends with Melissa.
Did not know that.
Yeah, they're best friends. Wow. And they grew up together, and Mrs. Abelys, their momager, was a lot. And so Matt,
you do know her.
Yeah, so Matt and I were over there at their house quite a bit. And we always felt, man, a little left out. I would have loved to have been on Little House. To me, it seemed like a lot of fun. And
it was.
For the two of us, we got to see, our friend not having to go to Buckley, not having to go to the real school. He was on set and doing his thing. And I always thought, boy, isn't it amazing how Minnesota looks so much like Southern California? But we grew up with all the Landon kids, too. They all went to Buckley as well. And, we always felt like we were honorary Little House members and air cast members, and we never got to work on it. But we always thought that it was really cool, That's
amazing.
I think Michael Landon was the Ozzy. He was the Ozzy Nelson of your era. He really was.
I agree. But during this period when you're out on the road, that's got to be an adventure that obviously can't be matched. But would you want it to be? Was it exciting? Was it fun? Was it all of those things?
All those things. Well, if you're talking about back in the day, it's decidedly it was different back then than it is now. And here's the contrast to all the viewers out there. Is that back then, this was the era before the internet and just before cell phones. Now, why is that important? It's important because you had culpable deniability.
Admissible. Goes back to being admissible.
Yeah, it goes back to that. We got away with everything, but everybody did. I raised 3 daughters, and it was totally normal to them. I was shocked. It was like, hang on a minute. So you're tracking all of your friends in real time, and they're tracking you in real time on your phone. So they're like, yeah. I said, that's horrible. It's like, well, what do you mean? We get to know where everybody is. I said, yeah, but I see you getting into fights because this girl is at that guy's house and all that stuff. Do you understand what a violation that is to your privacy? And they've just been raised in that. And my thing is like, back in my day, the girls could lie to their mom and say, hey, I'm spending the night at Michelle's house, but they really went to the Motley Crue show, right? You can't get away with that stuff now. And we could. You know, it was just our generation. We
Plus, they're also posting, here I am at Motley Crue.
Yeah, right?
It's like, no.
Exactly.
You kind of gave yourself up.
So being in the top rock band on planet Earth for a year in that day and age was unbelievable. It was so fun. You know, Grandpa Ozzy was always big because he was a Rutgers man. He was always big on a college education.
Right.
And we didn't have the resources, believe it or not, at the time to do that. The family was broke. We were broke. And, you know, we got signed to Geffen when we had $16 to our name in a joint bank account. So we had to work.
Yeah.
It wasn't, we didn't get the 4-year off plan like all of our friends who went to Palisades High School with us. So we just didn't have the choice. And I listened to their stories. My best friend, he's still my best friend to this day, awesome guy, went to UC Boulder. Plenty of stories. He joined the frat. He got the full experience. You know, got to play in a little bar band on the weekends and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, I think when I was still struggling before I released my record, you know, I was a little sad about that. Maybe a little gel. You got to go and do that and have that fun. And man, I was just trying to make it happen. And I was just one up from a street urchin. And then we caught fire, which was great. I had the best time out there killing myself than anybody has a right to, you know. Now, granted, it took me to the brink of death. It's in the book as well. I mean, I was at 119 pounds. 119. I'm almost 6 feet tall. And it was just from...
And this is drug free. This is just the life. This is not you're abusing yourself with chemicals. It's just the wear and tear of the road and the ladies.
This is actually running the equivalent of 5 miles on stage every night. We were working 6 nights a week. I was the front guy, and the whole 45 people's employment and everybody in the audience. We were playing to 20,000 people a night every night. Relied on this one little piece of cartilage right here in my throat. That one little 1-inch thing. And, you know, it's different when you're doing club shows and you're doing maybe 2 shows a week. If you're lucky, you're doing Friday and Saturday in LA. But when you catch fire and you're employing all these people, they've got to keep you working every night. Otherwise, everything falls apart. And so we were doing 6 nights minimum a week. And it was a 3-hour show. And it was a vocally acrobatic show. There were no tapes. There was no sampling. There was none of that stuff going on. We were doing the whole thing. So
can I ask, because I've never done it, I don't think anyone has except for a handful of people, when you're performing in front of 20,000 people, and again, drug free, that energy has got to be like a drug in that it amps you up, that you would be doing things that you wouldn't be doing if you were at the Roxy or Starwood. Yeah.
Well, it's not, to me, it was no difference to me. And here's the family tie-in too, when you're in a family business like that. No different, I suppose, than if you were a Manning and you were playing a football game, or if you were one of the Force kids and you were drag racing. You know, it was always the family business. It was the normal. But when it was time for the red light, so to speak, to go on, it was all business. You were there for a job, you know, and that it's that multi-generational professionalism that really, you know, I'm not kidding. There are nights when, you know, I always say, what we get paid for is the travel. We don't get paid for the time on stage. It's the most fun in the world to do that. It really honestly is. But everything else leading up to that no one has a business or a right to see, because our job is to make them forget about all that stuff, is really what takes a lot out of you. And we always took what we did. We didn't take ourselves seriously, but we took our craft seriously. You know, we were, as far as I was concerned, we were like the Marines, only they were throwing tomatoes. They weren't shooting at us. We were the first ones in, last ones out. And we did have the pressure of working at the highest level of standards that you possibly can. And coming from a long line of innovators where, believe it or not, a lot of doors were closed on my family members. Let's start with Ozzy really quick.
Yeah.
You're a director. You know the over-the-shoulder shot?
Yeah.
That's Ozzy Nelson's.
No.
Yeah, he invented that. He invented the 3-camera shoot. That was him. He,
Jesus.
as I mentioned, he wrote, produced, edited, directed, and starred in all 435 episodes of that show. Single longest running live action sitcom in television history. And Patrick, he has not received one single Emmy nomination.
That's crazy.
Ricky
That's
Nelson
nuts.
was single-handedly responsible for smuggling rock and roll into mainstream American living rooms at a critical time in its history. It was considered fringe music, race music, all of that. There was a lot.
Explain this, because you do it in the book. The difference
Yeah.
between Elvis and Ricky and what they offered.
Yeah, it was cool. It was nice when John Fogerty inducted our dad into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He made it clear. He said, Elvis Presley turned off a lot of parents. Ricky didn't. Pat Boone turned off a lot of kids. Ricky didn't. He just happened to be this guy, as history would attest, that he wasn't an actor who happened to sing. He was a singer who happened to be a fine actor. And he really made a choice at a certain time in his life where after he did Rio Bravo, he could have gone down the feature film route. Howard Hawks thought he was amazing. And he could have could have translated from TV to feature films and all that. But he just loved music and he loved his fans. So much so, as much to the detriment of his family. He sacrificed a lot to do it. But I understand that because I got that in me too. I love it. I love everything about it. I really honestly have never seen anything that can reach people that I will never meet in such a profound way. It's all about frequency. I talked to Jeff Skunk Baxter from the Doobie Brothers, great friend, and he breaks down what music really is and why it is so powerful, because the universe expresses itself as frequency. It's all frequency, like at a certain vibration.
Yeah, you're not talking. Yeah, you're literally talking about the physical vibrations that
I'm
when you're
talking
at a live
physical
show
vibrations.
or anything. Yeah,
like a certain frequency makes the color green. That's what I'm talking about, and it's really true. But I'm a guy who's gone to Indonesia, let's say, had a number one hit there, and we had our second record come out the day before we played a place out there. And in the audience are 5,000 people. All of them were women. All of them were covered head to toe. It's a Muslim country, so they're covered with the burqas, the shadurs, and whatever you call it. And all you could see was their eyes, right? And they're sitting there in the audience dancing along and all that stuff. And after a while, they started losing this, and you could see their mouths moved. They had phonetically learned the songs that were released the day before.
Oh my God.
To be able to share. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, you couldn't be more culturally different, right?
Yeah.
But the music that they didn't even understand, it didn't matter. All of a sudden, we're truly connected. And I honestly can tell you, I don't know anything in the world that can do that. Now, the one benefit of being in a film is that it's evergreen. That's great because every generation you have a hit movie, man, every generation kind of gets that, and that's cool. To a lesser extent, there's that way with the music and stuff. I mean, it's kind of cool raising teenage daughters and having their friends discovering the dad rock that their father makes and thinking it's pretty cool. It's kind of nice. But you give up a lot to do that. But it's really worth it. Back to this, if your reason why is strong enough. And I think that there are a lot of my contemporaries that have taken themselves out or gone down the path of drugs and alcohol and all that. And the one thing that I found that they all have in common is that they're cosplaying. They're playing the role of rock star and what they feel that's supposed to mean, rather than being their authentic self. A contrast would be one of my idols, Henry Rollins, the lead singer of Black Flag.
Yeah.
And we wrote a chapter about Henry in here, the unlikely pairing of the Nelson brothers and the lead singer from Black Flag, who have one thing in common. Henry, if you were to look at Henry, who, by the way, is a certified genius. The guy's amazing. He's written, 100 books, and he does spoken word stuff, and he's absolutely brilliant. But, when we first met, it was really tense because he put me and Matthew in his spoken word comedy routine, and we were basically pilloried. And Matthew met him after the show, and it's like, why are you here? Now, Henry, you got to look him up. He doesn't have a neck. The guy is, I mean, he looks like he's like seriously on the main yard all the time. Neck tattoos, no neck, buzz cut. he looks like a thug, like for real. People cross the
Yeah.
street when they see him. And that's what we said that we have in common. It's like, believe it or not, we got a lot more in common than you think. He's like, yeah, how do you figure? We said, well, again, look at you. People see you and they make a snap judgment and they think
Right.
you're going to murder them and all of their relatives. You know, people see the two of us and they think we're a couple of trust fund kids who are making music as a hobby. And, you know, we had it easy and all that stuff. And we're as fake as it gets. That's really just not the truth. And it was on that basis that we became unlikely friends. And he wound up doing a spoken word on our record. At the time, it was called Imaginator. But it was from that same thing. It's the same thing that happens when you're on a hit television show. You're on that hit show. And the good part about that is you bring joy to people and they connect with that. And it's their safe place. If they want to like feel like they felt when they first saw a particular episode, they'll put that on. They've got the ability to do that now, and it's great. And it's like a little time machine for them, and it's wonderful to be able to provide to people.
Yeah.
But what they don't see is the stuff that it costs you, the real person, not the character, to bring them that, to actually bring them that moment. And there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into that. I'm not saying it's not worth it, but to a lot of the people that are my contemporaries, if they weren't really being real, if they weren't being authentic, if they were cosplaying, and you know, it's kind of like it'd be no different from a blues singer who I know plenty of, who make the mistake in thinking that they've got to design a tragic life to be really blues people and to have the blues.
Right. To sing the blues, you got to feel the pain.
And it's like, I don't subscribe to that at all. I don't think that's really true. And in our case, what's really great is the funny thing is people saw the pageantry. They saw the long hair. They saw the outfits. They saw the Technicolor videos. They saw snow falling up and birds flying backwards. They saw all of that stuff courtesy of Jim and Paul that you mentioned.
Right. Yeah.
But that was really us. That was really basically a physical expression of who we've always been on the inside. That's how we've always felt. Everybody else was doing black and white spilled beer on your girlfriend's videos. Matthew and I went the opposite direction on purpose. We always did. But we were always authentic and we were always real. And the funny thing is people saw that and they went, oh, this is Milli Vanilli. You know, there's nothing that's real about this. And
Right.
It's not true. It's just, you know, honestly, and I think that really
Well, when you're up against that, I mean, you talk a lot about it, and I guess part of your not issue, but part of your life has been having to prove over and over again that you are who you are. That's which is a weird thing.
You know, guilty until proven innocent is really kind of always been our karma. But you know what's really, because again, back finding the silver lining on that. You know what's really cool about that is that it forces you to either quit, which we're not quitters. You know, we're Harmons on the other side. Remember, we don't quit, right?
Yeah.
It forces you to step up and to write songs that are undeniably strong. You know, you can't listen to it, even if it's not your cup of tea, you can't listen to it and go, well, that's completely incompetent, because we have our own standards. But
I don't know how long ago it was, but like if you mention any one of your songs, like I did not know that you guys were Power Tools. And I had that album forever, and I love that song. Can you explain that? Just because I think people
sure,
totally fascinating.
There was a song. Well, first off, we got our managers at the time, who were struggling. They had a friend in production who got the sides for a project that was coming up called Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Now, I want you to imagine what that synopsis read like. When we got
I know, because I auditioned for Bill and I didn't get it. But I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, so you know what I'm saying. It read, we thought, this is going to be the worst movie in the history of movies, you know? Two guys, you know, take over the most excellent water park in San Dimas and save the world through a time machine. They're like, oh, come on, right?
Right.
And so they said, hey, do you guys want to try to get a song on the soundtrack? And we thought, okay, great. At the time, that particular week, we were spending time with and co-writing with Dweezil Zappa, Frank Zappa's son. And he at the time had a lot of success. He was an MTV VJ in the early years of MTV. He was a guest VJ. And I guess MCA was making his first record. And he needed help just kind of getting his ideas together. Matt and I were proud to do that. It was me and Matthew and Josh Freeze, believe it or not, on drums at the time.
Wow.
And he's done very well for himself, too. And we were up at the Zappa
literally
house.
Played with every band.
Yeah, right. For real. The Foos most recently. and he, anyways, up at that house, at the Zappa house, it was pretty crazy times. You know, it was Moon was up there and Dweezil, but Donovan Leitch was up there all the time. I spent a little quality time with a young lady who I was desperately in love with, and she broke my heart, but I still love her to this day. Kyle Richards, before she was Kyle Richards. You know, it was a really interesting time.
No, Kyle was on Little House, and Kyle and
I know.
Kim and we all grew up together, and I get it. Yeah.
Kyle's a lot. She's always been a lot, you know.
That's
Great lady.
Exactly.
I love her to death.
Yeah.
But you know, this is a really interesting time. So we were recording at a place down the hill in Laurel Canyon, John Boylan's home studio. John Boylan produced our dad back in the day. If you look him up, he's been the epicenter of incredible music. He produced the first Boston record with Tom Schultz. He's done everything from Little River Band to Quarter Flash to Till Tuesday, you know, the Eagles, everything. You know, when Linda, he manages Linda Ronstadt right now. When she put her band together, John put the band together and they wound up being the Eagles.
I was going to say, when the band, her backing band was the Eagles. So
that was John
He knows
Boylan.
his musicians.
Yeah, and John is our godfather. So we were writing and recording in John's little basement studio. It was a very simple little setup with Dweezil. And we wrote a song called Two Heads Are Better Than One. And we thought, okay, Bill and Ted, two characters and all that kind of stuff. Maybe this would work. And we sent it into the producers and they loved it. So
what's interesting about it is you're who you are.
Yeah.
You're Gunnar Nelson, but it doesn't sound like Nelson. It sounds like Power Tool. It's not like a one for one. It's like if you put that song on a Nelson album, I don't know if it would fit.
We were still developing. That's the thing, is that we were technically signed to a development deal with John Kalodner. This was during that 3-year period of time where he kind of kept us on ice and we kept on going back to the writing room and developing our sound. So we were very fresh into it. This was the year after our father died. I was learning how to play guitar for the first time. Dweezil's a savant. He's an amazing guitar player.
Unbelievable, yeah.
You know, so we were all working together and stuff, and we didn't have the Nelson sound yet. Technically, if you squinted, we were signed to Geffen. And so basically we got this opportunity. They said it's going to be the title track. It's going to roll over the credits, and it's going to be when Joan of Arc is in there, you know, tearing down the world. And we thought that was really cool. But John Kalodner said, well, wait a minute. You guys can't be on the soundtrack as Nelson before we release your real stuff. I'm not going to let you do that. And we're like, well, we're not going to let the opportunity go, John. We got to do this. And he said, well, fine, but you're going to have to come up with a band name because you can't go out. I'm not letting you go out as Nelson. It's like, you know, this movie's going to suck and it's going to blow up and it's going to be horrible. And so we just on the spot, I came up with the name Power Tool and it stuck. But that's Matthew Nelson, Gunnar Nelson, and Dweezil Zappa. And I think it turned out great. It's just
a
lot
super
of fun.
group before anything happened. That's
amazing. It worked. You know, it was great too because we saw the screener when they finally synced everything to the movie and stuff, and they invited us down onto the lot to watch this. And you know, again, the only thing I'd seen was the write-up that you saw.
Yeah.
And it was really flipping good when we saw it.
It ended up being they cast the right guys. Those guys are amazing.
Look, the whole thing was brilliant. It was really done well. But it was the first time I ever heard Extreme. I heard Play With Me.
Oh wow!
And I was
that's
like,
another great song.
Who the hell is that guy playing guitar? Because I'd never heard it played that way. And you know,
Nuno Bettencourt, which is
Nuno Bettencourt, and I got to be really good friends with the drummer in Extreme, with Paul Geary, who's now a big manager. And Paul told me, because I've always been a big Nuno fan, and he said, you know, some people are just kind of born to play their instruments. You know, Nuno apparently just decided to play guitar and was playing that way 6 months into it. It just like a fish to water. He was just a savant. And inspirational, to be honest with you. Matt and I were just really kind of happy to be a part of that. And that was 3 years before Nelson was actually really released as Nelson. And you're right, it doesn't sound like it wouldn't fit.
I mean, it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder, and of course, it's non-acoustic. But around this time, one of the actors in summer school and a really good buddy of mine, Dean Cameron. I sent him a picture of. I want to give you props for this because this is fucking amazing. It's genius. On your merch store, you've got a Nelson T-shirt. in the color and form of a Nirvana T-shirt with the
Don't know what
with
you're
the
talking
happy
about.
face.
I have no idea what
No,
you're
of
talking
course,
about.
without any copyright infringement at all. If
None
that
at all. I
existed,
don't. You know what? If
it's
somebody
a
did that,
genius T-shirt. I loved it, so I sent it to Dean, and I said, "This is genius." And he says, "Hey, see if they remember working with a guy named Steve Klong,
Of
who we
course.
both knew as and
Yeah.
Klong was a friend of ours,
Oh,
a great drummer,
great drummer. We lost him
to
way too early.
Yeah.
He was Steve.
But again, there you go. It's like so many interactions of all these.
But you're
I've
picking
kept
like with
you way
Dean
too
and with
long.
Steve. You're picking these really good people. And
Well, these are. I do luck out. If you get a chance, he's got a new band called Low Speed Chase, and they're opening for King's X at Whiskey, and they're.
Let's get it
he's great.
straight. King's X is closing for them.
Very cool. All right, so before we get into the questions here, which is how we end this thing, we got to talk about a couple of things. First of all, Peacemaker fan, loved Peacemaker. Was
Yeah.
so surprised when you guys pop up there. James Gunn's famous for loving that era of music, but how did you guys get involved in that?
It's completely organically, which was wonderful. I mean, I've always been a giant James Gunn fan. The awesome mixtape 1 and 2 from the Guardians
Yeah.
movies, that tells you all you really need to know about James as a music fan.
Great
I've always been a yacht rocker at heart. So Matthew always made fun of me for decades about loving AM 70s music. And then he puts Redbone on there, and Matthew's son loves the soundtrack, and all of a sudden I'm cool. So thanks, James. We actually Nelson was playing a show at the Canyon Club right there in Agora.
Uh-huh.
And we showed up with our band. We brought our A game, and there were a bunch of kind of like semi suits that wanted to meet us after the show, and they introduced themselves as the producers from James Gunn's production company. And I thought I was being punked. And I said, no, I'm just, my name's Lars, and I work with James, and he sent me down here to basically scout your band. We're thinking about using you in something he's working on right now with John Cena, the Peacemaker. And I said, so basically, James sent you down here to make sure that we didn't suck, right? And he said, yeah. I said, did we pass the audition? He said, yes, you did. As a matter of fact, we called James and put you on video and showed him it, but he had something in mind. Now, we didn't know exactly what he had in mind.
Right.
About 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from the music supervisor from the Peacemaker that said James is a fan of a song that you did with Nelson on a record that you originally released on Frontiers. Your Stone Canyon Records label did a joint venture with Frontiers. Excuse me. And
Bless you.
and it was called, thank you. It was called To Get Back to You. We did it
Yeah.
17 years ago on a record called Lightning Strikes Twice. I've always been a big fan of that particular single. It's a power ballad.
Yep.
And I knew it was special. So I even had Steve Lukather from Toto do the guitar solo on it and all that. Had a real quartet that we paid to do it. And apparently James he had read a review of that record way back when, 17 years ago. We're the only American band, or we were in 26 years, to get 7 out of 7 diamonds in Metal Hammer of Germany for that record, which was
Wow.
yeah, which was really interesting because it was a heavy pop record, but the Germans loved it, which I thought was great. He read that review, got the record, loved that song, kind of mind banked it. Said, one day I want to put that song in an episode. We didn't.
Well, for those who haven't seen, it's like so very clearly the subtext of what's happening. It's like you're narrating the scene.
It was great because it was the moment where the character of Hardcore and the character of the Peacemaker, they had sexual tension from the very beginning of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan too, so I'm like wondering, are these two going to hook up eventually or what? And it turns out that they had their first kiss at a Nelson concert. So that's what it was all about. Was and the episode actually came out, was called Full Nelson, and It is the season 2 finale. And it was really, it was so cool because we spent 2 days filming a real on film video on a set, the whole thing, with James Gunn himself directing the whole thing. And the greatest compliment was, James saying at the end of it, who he, by the way, is the nicest guy in the world. What a talent. But he said, this is the most fun I have ever had filming ever in my career, my whole career. And I thought, man, that's kind of a pretty cool distinction, That's
a big compliment. Yeah.
And it was nice. And he also explained to me too, he said, I'm sure you guys have thought about doing the Comic-Cons now. You legitimately can do the Comic-Cons now. But I just want to point out to you that as part of the DC universe, there is a very good chance that the Peacemaker has annoyed the shit out of Superman by playing your stuff too loud. And I thought, all right, I like that. Pretty cool.
We'll be back after these messages. Hey, I'm Patrick Labyorteaux, and I play an actor on TV, and I've been doing this for a long, long time. And I know what it's like if you are in a class with people, and sometimes you just want to have that one-on-one connection with the person that you're working with to go over, I don't know, a particular scene, or maybe you have an audition, or maybe you just want the privacy to try stuff that you don't really know is going to work and not have anyone look at you. Well, I have the perfect solution for you. It's called One-on-One with Patrick Labyorteaux. You can book your time at workingactorschool.com, and it's just me and you for an hour going over whatever it is you want to work on, breaking down the script, talking about character, figuring out your intention, the spine of the scene, everything that goes in to making a dynamite performance. So if you're interested in acting and want that one-on-one personal attention, check out One-on-One with Patrick Labyorteaux. You can find all the information you need at workingactorschool.com. Act 4, questions. Okay, so we're into the questions. If Matthew comes back, he can participate. But these are called Tina's Got to Know. They're from my wife, Tina, and she's got to know these things. And the first question is that showbiz. What would you say, and we'll use Hollywood, but same for you. What's the most Hollywood moment in your life?
Wow. Well, I write about it in the book. As far as it relates to us, it was actually Erie, Pennsylvania, 1990, early 1990. And Matthew and I were on promotion. We'd done a little bit of MTV work as hosts, and we were just on promotion. And they had released the first single, but we hadn't been home yet to listen to it on pirate radio. But all our friends were calling us saying, "Hey, we're hearing your song on the radio. It's so cool." And we thought, okay, this is really kind of neat. But Matthew and I were busy getting up at 4 a.m. every day, going into morning radio, doing all that kind of all over the country. And we found ourselves in Erie, Pennsylvania, and we were going to be playing their annual kind of like, city festival thing that they always do. And they took us out in a boat, middle of the night. They took us out in a boat about 2 miles down the shore from where we were going to be playing. We were going to be playing on the end of a big pier that they had in their bay there and stuff. And they, middle of the night, so you couldn't see anything. They were navigating and stuff by their little GPS thing. They got us to the end of the pier and brought us up the stairway and stuff. We still hadn't seen the audience yet. And it was just me and Matthew. That was it. The two of us, 2 acoustic guitars like we did on promotion. And they announced us. The guy went out there in front of the curtain and announced us, and it sounded like a jet engine. Never heard anything like that before. It was crazy. And they opened up the curtain, and it was hard to describe, but it turned out to be 66,000 people who had come just to see us play, just 2 guys from Burbank.
Whoa.
And it was the kind of thing where the audience was so large, they had those sound pylons time aligned going back into the audience so the people in the back weren't going to get a delay and stuff. And it kind of looked, man, it was a lot like, in my world, a lot like when Queen took the stage at Wembley and you looked out at that sea of people. Yeah. That to me was the moment when I realized, okay, this is different. Whatever this is that we put together, that we built, it's working. This is really working. And it was the coolest thing because it wasn't like being, part of a festival lineup. All of those great people had come to see just the 2 of us play.
And you're acoustic, so it's just you and,
which is great
for that big of an audience.
Yeah, it's totally cool. Look, I love doing it that way. Matthew and I love going out there, rocking the Explorers and the Flying V's and turning out the amps. Don't get me wrong, I love that.
Sure.
But the thing that we've always had to do as guys who are guilty until proven innocent, the great equalizer is being able to go out there with nothing and doing your thing. I mean, just being completely exposed, because if you suck playing acoustic and singing, everybody knows. But it's really something that Matthew and I have always done since we were kids. So we're most comfortable. We realized, actually, we say this in the book as well, all of our biggest opportunities were actually were gained from going with 2 acoustic guitars, like getting signed to John Colodner in the first place. We got our record deal, busting into his office and forcing him to sit there and singing a brand new song we'd written that morning when we were desperate, and it was Love and Affection. And that's what got us our record deal. our biggest show in
Wow.
Erie, Pennsylvania, two guys with two acoustic guitars. It's just always worked for us. And as a matter of fact, it's interesting because when I called our dad's manager, Greg McDonald, when we were at the Ocotillo Lodge, he brought us over to Elvis Presley's manager's house. He brought us over to Colonel Parker's house.
Oh my God, the
And
Colonel.
the Colonel. It's all in there in a chapter. And it was interesting because it was about a year before the Colonel died. He wasn't in great shape. But he met us. He wasn't meeting anybody at the time, but because we were Ricky's kids and he loved our dad, we got to have a little meeting with him. And he said, "So, what are you guys doing? What are you up to?" And we said, "Well, we're the only unsigned band in history to be the musical guests on Saturday Night Live. We did that about 6 months ago, and
That's a sweet flex.
we've been working on trying to find the best guys to be in our band." And he stopped me immediately. He said, "You don't need a band. Forget the band. You don't need a band. Just you two guys, two acoustic guitars. That's it. You're done." And we left that meeting. Everybody was living on a prayer at the time. Bigger was always better. And we
Yeah.
thought, what does that old guy know? Come on, he's a relic. And I can't believe the disrespect I kind of secretly gave the man. And in hindsight, Patrick, he was right. He was really right.
Wow.
Everything that we've ever done, that's always been the power. It's always been the nucleus of everything. Everything else is set dressing,
Yeah.
But back then everybody had big bands, and we had the greatest guys in the world in our band, and they were way overqualified for the simple pop music Matt and I wrote. Again, back then there were no tapes, there were no samples, there was none of that stuff. You had to throw it down live. Every member of our band sang, and it was
Right.
great, and we lost our asses going on that tour and bringing a big show. We probably could have gone out there at that time in front of all of those girls with two guys and two acoustic guitars like no one was doing at the time, and had an even better time and brought all the money home. But I always say that Nelson, the first time around, Nelson was the band I always dreamed of having before I knew what I wanted in a band. And if you were to give me an option right now, I would go in front of any size audience on planet Earth in any country, whether or not they spoke English or not, just with my brother and two acoustic guitars. A drop of a hat.
These are great. The second one is That's Showbiz Part 2. What's the most embarrassing rock moment in your life?
Wow. Let me think. Okay. On promotion for that first tour, Matthew and I going out doing our acoustic thing, and the fashion of the day was very ripped blue jeans, which Matthew and I were both sporting that particular day. Big crowd, few thousand people. Most of them were 16-year-old girls. Which is awesome. By the way, any musician who said he didn't start making music to get chicks is lying, just saying. So we're sitting out there and just enjoying this. This is great. The girls are going mental, and it was so much fun. We're playing our stuff for them, and it was sponsored by the local radio station. And I'm at the front, the apron of the stage, doing my thing. And I look down just in time to see a girl looking up at me. And she reaches up and grabs my crotch area where there was a big rip, by the way, right there, and gets her hand in that thing. And I go to back up, and my blue jeans stay in her hand. They literally tear off. And I wasn't wearing any underwear that day. So the only thing keeping me from a legendary status was the acoustic guitar in front of me. So that was probably the most embarrassing moment. And by the way, we had three more songs to play, and we finished all the songs. Just want to let you know.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's embarrassing for sure, but still a very rock star moment. I don't know how you're going to answer this one. I think you got 1,000 ways to answer it. Number 3, show me the money. What's your biggest missed financial opportunity?
Okay, that's super easy. Okay. Our manager at the time turned down $1 million from Mattel to do Matthew and Gunnar action figures. They're dolls, but turned down $1 million. By the way, and that's in 1990 dollars. That's like $20 million.
Oh my God!
Because he didn't think it was rock and roll enough, which is really interesting because I pointed out to him that Kiss did dolls.
I was about to say Kiss has dolls.
That is the easiest answer, and the fact, believe it or not, we never did a shampoo commercial, Patrick. Can you believe that? Never did a shampoo commercial. But
That
it's
seems
really,
like your first wave of merch should have been shampoo, dolls.
it's not too late. I'm
Wigs,
going to come out with a line of
costumes.
hair care. My line of hair care is going to be called Hair Farmer. It's going to be awesome. But no, that would be an
Well, no,
easy answer.
you have to have a whole thing of after the shower.
Oh, yeah.
After
You know it.
best answer so far for anyone that I've asked that question to. Number 4, show and tell. As a teenager, what was your favorite poster in your room, and where'd you get it?
Matthew and I wallpapered our bedroom in Playboy centerfolds when we were 8 years old.
Oh my God!
Oh yeah, we started young. Yeah, boobs are fantastic. But
A big
yeah.
fan here too.
yeah, I'm just the fun for the whole family. What can I say? But yeah, that would have been on my wall. Funny enough, before I became a teenager, and after that, there were two things that were going on in our lives. We love to water ski. I'm a barefooter, so
Okay.
I always had posters on my wall from like going to summer camp in Northern California, a place called Mount Meadow Ranch, which I loved, and learned how to barefoot up there, which was great. So I had some of those posters on my wall. I had some rock bands. The first Boston record, like I mentioned, from John Boylan was just out, so I had the posters from Boston 1 and Boston 2, which I thought were great. And I also had, it was basically a standard issue for teenagers of my era, and it was a different time. Remember, we came from the David Lee Roth era of making music unapologetically. Yep. So I had a poster you should look up. I'm sure you know this. It was called Haulin' Ass, and it was 4 girls from the back in the bed of a pickup truck.
Right.
And let's just say their derrieres were fantastic. So that was definitely on
And
my
that's
wall.
it's the perfect humor for a teenage boy. Like, get it?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. That lines up.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 5, showdown. And this is not like family. This is personal. In the sense of like children isn't an answer to this. What's the best thing you've ever done and the worst thing you've ever done? Like, what are you the most proud of professionally and the least proud of?
I'm back to the same answer to the question. I know it sounds trite.
That's okay.
Remaining a relatively good guy in the worst business in the world. That's what I'm most
I love
proud
that.
of.
No. I love that. But let's be
I'm
more
more proud of
specific.
that.
Like, what's the thing as a musician that you go, that's the thing I loved most? It could be a performance, could be a song.
Got it.
And then the one where you go, you know what? That wasn't my best. I did a movie that sucked, and I know exactly what I'm
Okay,
thinking.
well, I've got simple answers.
Okay.
The best moment was I was invited to Washington, D.C. with Matthew to play a ballad that we wrote called Just Once More for the families from 9/11 at the Pentagon that
Oh my
families
God.
have lost their people. So that night was really interesting. It was a benefit night, and it was the two of us playing that song, which is about, we wrote it for our dad. It was about giving up everything we've ever gotten for just 5 more minutes of time with him, so it was about appreciating the people that are in your life while you got them. And it was appropriate for that particular night. It was about 10,000 people there. Everyone was crying, which was amazing. And it was just a really amazing experience. And it was the only way I could give back to all of those people who had experienced that kind of tragedy. So for a moment, at least, I didn't feel
that lines up as far as what you've been, consistently, understandably explaining of like the connection and
that was probably the moment. That and
yeah.
that and the fact that I got to meet Muhammad Ali that night, which was insane. It was so great. He was God, what an amazing man. I loved how we met too. His wife was there, and he had his Parkinson's and was having a hard time getting around. Still very cognizant at the time, and she said, Muhammad, this is Ricky Nelson's son. He really wanted to meet you. His name's Gunnar. And he walks up to me, and big man. I'm looking up, and he leans over me like this, and he sticks out his hand to shake my hand. And I take his hand, and he squeezes, and it's like getting, it's like shaking hands with a bunch of bananas. Okay, this guy's hand was 4 times bigger than mine. He engulfed my hand.
Yeah.
And he pulled me into him, and I'm looking up, and we're like this, obviously. And he looks at me and he goes, "Pretty boy." And I thought, "Thank you, sir." That was a great experience. I love that. I thought that was cool. So that was my best night. Honestly, was that night. That was
That's pretty awesome.
intense.
Yeah.
And the missed opportunity you were saying, was there
no. What do you like when you look at it? Like for me, it would be like I look at a scene and I go, I just wasn't good. I suck in this scene. And it's not that you didn't try, but like you just failed.
I got your answer for you. The decision, the moment in my life that I'm least proud of, at least career wise. I got plenty personally, but I'm never going to be president. Let's just say, in my career, it would be a record that we made when Nirvana had happened, and we got completely gutted, and we were just trying to eat. And it was the only time I can honestly admit that I did a cash grab, that I made a record because we were offered an advance that was going to see us through at least for a year. That I did not keep the quality standard, my personal quality standard, at the level it should have been. And it was a record called The Silence is Broken. It was probably 1994 or 95. And it had one good song on that record. I've never done that to our fans ever. But I can honestly say I had one good song called Ghost Dance. Everything else was crap. It was just junk. The record sounded bad. The songs weren't up to scratch. They were probably songs that didn't make the cut on previous records that I kind of threw together. It was the only time I can admit that I just basically did a cash grab. Now, the good side of that whole thing is I will never do it again because I've got that as an anchor. I always refer back to that record. Here's the thing, man. I'm just a dumb kid from Burbank. I was born at St. Joseph's Hospital. All I've ever wanted to do was be like my dad and make music and make people happy. And here I am still doing it. And I'm still grateful, and I'm still pinching myself that people haven't caught on to the fact that I'm still learning, and I'm still... I feel like a kid in a candy store because I get to be around my heroes all the time. It's the greatest thing in the world.
Well, it's a great energy to have. What did you, this is called No Show. It's for actors, but like, it's not the what part did you want but didn't get. What was the opportunity, or what was something through your career which kind of, that you wanted but you didn't get?
Is that kind of like reading for Bill and Ted's and not getting the role?
Kind of like that. I almost want to answer for you in that I would wish that my record company would have promoted our second album, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we write about this in the book too, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. Matthew and I were the bookends of the confidence rock generation. We literally were the last huge success on Geffen Records, which broke Nirvana on our label. At that time, Matt and I go out and we're on the tour for the After the Rain tour, and the whole world changed overnight. And it's the single largest paradigm shift in music industry history, and that includes the death of disco. And both were engineered by the suits in the industry for the same reason, and I understand why. All the confidence rockers who were living on a prayer, we were all making $500,000 videos. It was bloated. It was expensive. So if you're a suit at a record company and someone comes to you like they did when, everybody was doing disco, let's say. Donna Summer was demanding $2 million a record back then. Right. And some enterprising, young kid at the label says, did you know there's a scene over in London? It's called punk. And those guys will work for a dime bag and a Happy Meal. You can basically make them your slaves. And so the next day, it seemed like on Tuesday, everybody was listening to the Bee Gees. And the next day, they were burning the records at the radio stations. The death of disco. It was all engineered. But the same thing happened with grunge. This is not conjecture. It happened. The people who really run the industry, ran it at the time, got together and they said, we can't afford this anymore. Whitesnake wants $5 million for their next record. Our profit margins are shrinking. What are we going to do? Well, there's a label called Sub Pop up in Seattle. You can go up there and you can buy the entire record forever for $20,000. And that's what they started doing. So we go on the road thinking, okay, this is great. We've caught a lick. We're going to get another record and another record after that. We can build our career. We can do the whole thing. We didn't know that, gosh, man, all of a sudden, everybody was playing Poison and Motley Crue on MTV on a Tuesday and on a Wednesday. It wasn't happening. If you weren't from Seattle wearing flannel and all that stuff, you were not getting played on the biggest radio station in the world, which was MTV. It ended overnight. It was violent.
Yeah.
And, the one indicator that it was designed is, if you notice, there was no lag time between that Tuesday and Wednesday and when Flannel and Doc Martens showed up at the Gap. They were there the same day. They were waiting. They were waiting for the whole thing. And so there were a lot of bands from my era that were basically heroes one day and zeros the next. And it was no fault of their own. The only ones that really survived truly were the ones that either were the absolute priority bands on their labels. So like even Aerosmith moved over to Sony. They had to move to go to a different label.
Right.
Motley Crue survived. Of course, the bigs all survived. But the middle level bands had a really, really difficult time. And I'm not saying that a lot of music from that particular era needed to die. It did. A lot of it was so derivative and so unimaginative. I understand that. And there was a lot of music from that new era that was great. Yeah.
Okay, final question. Show me some love. What's your favorite performance of mine, Gunnar?
Well, you were Mr. Garvey's son, to be honest with you. You're part of my childhood, brother.
Yeah, that's it, baby.
I always felt so jealous that all of my friends were working with you and I wasn't, So are you guys going to do a reboot of Little House finally? Mm-hmm. Is anyone?
No, Netflix is doing a new Little House, but they're basing it on the books, and that's fine. But none of the original cast members. And at this point, look, I think all the people that are still around are great, and they're all talented. But it's just without Michael, it's like it's not the same. It's like
totally get it.
Canyon Band getting back together again. It's like why?
I totally get it. Well, we face that all the time with bands that are out there still touring. And, when there's like nobody
My
original.
favorite are the ones that, exactly, when they're the bands that have no one in them that were in them.
I just always found I found that really interesting. I thought, Matthew, I wanted to do a thing, maybe even just a little kind of independent project. Because I joke that it's really a tribute band world. So we're going to come out next year as a tribute to Nelson. And we're going to film it. We're going to film the tryouts and all that stuff. And I'm not going to actually make it because I'm just not quite Gunnar enough.
Yeah, that's hysterical. You have to do that.
I'm very seriously.
I want to thank you and your brother for this. This was really, through Super Manager Eric. I just think that it was such a. I fanboyed all over you guys. I really do enjoy your music. But again, what's amazing to me, and I'm telling the people, please, you got to read the book. You got to listen to the book. It's a great story. It's a great family story, and it's really inspirational. The name of the book is What Happened to Your Hair?
And it's, if you go on Amazon, they'll send it right to your house.
Yep. They got that nailed. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate you, man. We'll talk to you soon.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux Show. Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Hey, everybody. I'm so glad that you're enjoying the podcast and checking it out. It is an audio podcast wherever you get your audio podcast, and it's a video podcast over on YouTube. My socials are all patrick.labyorteaux. And that is on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok. I'm everywhere. If you want information on the school, you can go to workingactorsschool.com. We have classes going all the time. It's a lot of fun. I suggest you check it out. Hey, we'll see you next time.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux Show. Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.
Hey, we're Stacy and Pete, and we host We Don't Want to Grow Up, a podcast all about those warm and fuzzy memories from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s.
We're revisiting the pop culture, toys, and memories that shaped a generation.
Gen X, millennials, and I'm over here representing the Zennials. So if you ever experienced waiting for your Delia's catalog to show up after school, or if you got lost wandering the aisles of Toys R Us, this show's for you. You can listen to us everywhere podcasts are available.